Welcome to another edition of Midweek Moment. My name is Minister Zaneta Dabney, and I am so excited to be your host for this month's special edition. We are now a year from the premiere of Financial Foundations, a financial literacy workshop that was hosted over 6 sessions where financial professionals, teachers, and experts presented on an array of topics, which included key financial topics such as budget basics, credit care, borrower's burden, mastering your money, estate essentials, and retirement ready. Yes, we covered the entire gamut of financial foundations. Now, a year later, we are here still navigating COVID-19 and uncertain times, yet we wanted to revisit key topics and lessons learned from our keynote speakers. The knowledge and information presented was rich and transferable, but who are some of these keynotes and how have they navigated these tumultuous times? This is our second week recapping on financial foundations. On last week, we revisited our keynote speaker, Michelle Alexander, who spoke on borrower's burden last year, and got to know her and her inspiration in becoming a financial educator and instructor. On this week, we welcome back one of my good friends and our keynote speaker that presented on retirement ready, Melanee Stubbs. Melanee Stubbs is a graduate of Kent State with a bachelor's in chemistry pre-med and a graduate from Pepperdine University with a master's in psychology. She also has a background in fitness. Prior to joining World Financial Group, she was a stretch therapist, which was labor intensive. With all of her schooling, never once was she required to take a finance class or learn how money works. She was introduced to the company through a financial workshop, and she is now a broker with World Financial Group and building a huge agency across the country. She is licensed in 12 states with agents in 8 and expanding. You want to hear from this boss lady who is eloquent, strong, full of love and positivity, and may I add, extremely beautiful, as well as a huge passion for helping families in this industry. She is a young Black woman in her 20s on a mission to spread financial knowledge and decrease the wealth gap that exists in this country. We welcome to the Midweek virtual platform, Melanee Stubbs. Welcome, Melanee.
Thank you so much, Zaneta. That was amazing.
How are you today?
Oh, I'm doing amazing. First, I want to say happy Mother's Day. Yes, we are recording on Mother's Day. I wouldn't be here without my beautiful mother. You wouldn't be here without your beautiful mother. So I'm so grateful for all the moms because they made the decision to bring us into this world, right?
Yes, definitely. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers on today. So Melanee, we are so excited to have you. As I mentioned, this is one of my good friends. We met in the most interesting way through a connection of another person, and we have literally been friends since.
Yes.
I'm so excited to have you back on the platform. When you did your retirement ready session on last year, it was excellent. You covered so many key topics and also introduced us to this idea of compound interest. We're so used to kind of our standard retirement packages, your 401k, your IRA, but this idea of indexing and compounding interest was new to many of us. So we'll probably touch on that a bit later in the interview. So
thank you.
On today, Melanee, we have a few questions for you.
Okay.
And so we just want to kind of navigate to get to know who you are. As I mentioned, you obviously have a wealth of knowledge and information. But one of our first questions is, when did you decide to focus primarily on financial independence and health?
Yes. So you mentioned my background in chemistry, pre-med, master's in psychology. I was planning to go to med school and studying for the MCAT, but I couldn't wrap my head around that. And I was invited to a financial workshop, which you mentioned. And I remember sitting there and I was just thinking, no one's ever taught me this information, right? And in the same token, I had to realize they couldn't teach me something that they didn't know. So since there were people that couldn't teach me this information, I finally learned it. It took me moving to Los Angeles to learn this. Okay, there's an opportunity for me to take this information back to my community, back to my family and friends. So I saw the importance and the huge need for, financial literacy. So I took a leap of faith and completely switched fields, and that happens a lot. You get a degree in one area and you work in a completely different.
Yes.
So, it was in 2019, and I'm so excited for this journey. I love helping people, learn, like you said, about compound interest and indexing, because not many people know.
Excellent. Excellent. I was thinking when you were speaking, I don't know if we laid the groundwork, but if you can give some background of where you come from. You're in LA now, posh, right? We know you're in the nice LA, but what's your background? Just let us know where you came from and how you eventually landed there.
So I'm from a little town called Maryville, Indiana. It's right next to Gary, Indiana, for most people who know Gary. And, I grew up playing basketball. My dad and my mom, actually, they met playing basketball, and they had me, and, basketball was my life. I got a basketball scholarship. That's how I went to Kent State. It was a full ride. And I remember visiting LA when I was 6 years old to visit my uncle. And I told him when I came, I said, hey, I'm going to move to LA one day. So after I graduated from Kent State, I applied to one school, Pepperdine. And, I asked him, I said, hey, can I come live with you, whether I get in or I don't? I was really hoping I would. And I got the acceptance letter, and I said, hey, I got in. And that August, he flew to Chicago for a work event, and we drove cross country to LA. That was almost 6 years ago now.
Wow.
So, I finished school and I stayed, right? I love it here. I go back home to visit, but I try to get them to come this way to visit now.
No, and I'm sure there's an industry for what you're doing there as well. When I think of LA, right, I mean, this is very stereotypical, but I think it still applies. There's a lot of artistry there, right? Upcoming artists, people go there to kind of launch their entertainment careers. So I can imagine what you're doing would be very beneficial. And if anything, you probably found a niche there of people that you can speak to say, okay, you may not have a traditional 9-to-5, right? Or you may not have, a corporate job necessarily, but there's still ways for you to generate wealth and income, even if you're doing. So that's excellent. That's excellent. So our next question for you, Melanee, is what inspired you to start your own financial business?
Right. It goes back to that workshop, learning that information. And even when I did the workshop for you all, I was able to help a lady set up her and her husband's full retirement plan, right? They were in their late 60s, but, I'm just happy to say that they'll have money that's going to last them for the rest of their life. And they're set. So it was things like that. And too often we see in our communities where there are people in their 50s, 60s, 70s still working, right? And the older ones, even in LA, there are a lot of older drivers for Lyft and Uber, and they're in their 60s sometimes. I always ask them, why do you still drive, or why do you still work? And a lot of them just didn't have enough money in retirement. So, it goes back to that huge need. And even in the Black communities, that wealth gap, we don't know about money. And sometimes what I'm finding too in California is even people with money don't know about index. So about 95% of people don't receive this information. They're not taught the financial literacy. Yes, they may have money, but sometimes they don't know about compound interest, or they don't know about index. I'll say that. Index is that huge, it's the secret, right?
It is. Truly, it is.
One factor that takes you to the next level. So I fell in love with that. I have my own account with that. And it's just, once you believe in something and you're passionate about it, you can help so many people.
I love that. Yes, you brought up a few points that I think are extremely critical. You talked about the wealth gap. within our community. And I think, you know, we spoke about this even a little bit last week with Michelle Alexander, this idea of we know what we should do, right? Or we know now, particularly, that there's been a resurgence of information where it's literally flooding in. You can go to YouTube and find information, or you can, you know, just kind of Google and find information, right? But I think the gap is even widened because we don't know how to leverage those tools. How do you then put that into action, right? How do you then put that into use?
Right.
Although the information is there. And I think that's where people like yourself comes in and say, okay, well, you don't know how to apply it. I can help you, right? And this is the way to do it. Or these are some of the key indicators, as you were mentioning, that you need to be looking for. I think something that you also mentioned was just your passion. I think, especially when it comes to finances, this idea of helping the community, lifting as, you know, you climb, right? I think is something that is so important when it comes to financial literacy, because it's not an easy feat, right? We know we're very private with our finances. We don't like to share. I don't want to tell, no, you don't need to know how much money I make. Come on here. How much money I got in the bank, right? I mean, we tend to be very, very close to the vest when it comes to that. And I think it just has to do with this idea of, you know, there's always been the crabs in the barrel mentality. Only one person can win. Only one person can be successful. Only one person can rise to the top. Only one person can shine in our community. And so I think we are in an age where that's starting to transition and move. People are being more open and being more candid and saying, hey, I need to get out of debt. Hey, my finances don't look as good as they should do. Hey, my credit is suffering. How can I move and navigate in this space? And so I think, again, tremendous when you said, I was so excited when you mentioned this idea of passion as well as the wealth gap. And that's what drove you. Particularly, I wanted you to mention you coming from Indiana, because I'm sure you saw some of that as well, right? Because a lot of that starts with where we grew up and kind of where we come from. And then you see the gaps and it's like, well, how can we improve this? And I believe even for a period of time, you were going back to create a team there, right? Just to kind of help out and say, again, here is the information. Let me introduce you to this. That's where I met you at one of your workshops. And so it was just tremendous to see what you were doing in the community. So I wanted to just mention that. And I think that that's excellent, Melanee. So to our next question, as I mentioned in our introduction, we are now a year out from our 6-series workshop of financial foundations. We are also a little bit over a year now from beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. What key financial advice have you, Melanee, established for your personal goals based on COVID? And what financial advice during this time have you adjusted as a result of COVID-19?
Right. So I remember you saw my original presentation. And there was one point in that presentation where COVID happened, and I focused on that point because I realized how important it was. And it's paying yourself first. So often we pay everything else first, but we have to pay us and our families first, because imagine having an emergency fund going into COVID. So many people lost their jobs. Well, most of us don't have savings. Right? A lot of people have less than $1,000 in savings. Well, what if you had 4 or 5, even 10,000 that you paid yourself? Now you don't have a job. You can still pay for your bills. I was just reading an article that there were so many people that were backdated on their rent or their mortgage. And so I guess they're trying to overturn the eviction law. And so many people owe so much money. And if they had that emergency fund, that would have made all the difference for them. But also, I always like to say we live in the era of a side hustle. You have to have 2 sources of income.
I like that.
One is just not enough anymore, right? So now when you lose your job, in my business, we're a pandemic-proof business. My business actually increased when the pandemic happened. Why? Because so much was happening with money. People didn't know about index, so they're losing money in the market. Okay, well, let me show you how you can get some guarantees and, you know, still gain with the market and different things like that. So 2 things, paying yourself first, but also having a second source of income.
No, that is so excellent. When you said that, I love that it's we're kind of in this side hustle time, right?
The side hustle, yeah.
Yes, the era of the side hustle. I love that. I think you should coin that. That is good,
Yeah.
right? Because it's actually, so true. Yeah. I think you should, right? It's so good. And I think you could market that in such a way because everybody and anybody in some way, this hit them to say, wake up.
Yes.
Right. It is time for you to wake up and get your finances together because to your point, none of us are protected. We're all susceptible to being impacted by COVID. So this idea of having a side hustle is critical. Even for me, you know, I started doing some things with technology and things like that to say, well, maybe this could work, right? Dabbling into other things, investing or more, rather, I should say, or, you know, just trying to understand how to diversify your money because ultimately that is truly the key. You said something as well. It's not just about side hustle, but I think something adjacent to that is also having multiple streams of income, right? Which is complementary of that side hustle. And that stream of income doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be out there actively doing something, right? But one of my favorite financial gurus always say, you know, make your money grow for you while you're asleep, right? That's kind of the ultimate goal. And the last thing I'll say about that is it doesn't mean it has to make a significant amount of money for you, right? I know a friend of mine who started Ubering during, you know, challenging times in her life. This was prior to the pandemic, but she had ran up on a rough time. She had a corporate job, right? But she needed more money and she started Ubering. And she literally, her thought process was, if I just make enough money to cover my expenses, right? That would include groceries, or, you know, she likes to get her nails done or her hair or whatever. That extra money she can then put towards managing her debt. So it doesn't have to be you're making thousands or millions, but just enough supplemental money to help you further along the way. So I think that is such a genius thing to state. We're in the era of girl. I'm telling you,
we have the internet. Right?
Yes.
It's so easy to make money from home off the internet. There's so many different businesses you can do, right? And keep in mind, right? Someone can get started in this industry and learn so much about their own personal finances, but then go and teach it to someone else. Because if we don't teach it to our communities, who's going to do it?
Exactly. So our next and final question, Melanee. Oh my gosh. Again, this has been so great. I'm so excited to have you back again. Is what is the best piece of financial management advice that you have found effective and relevant today?
Other than pay yourself first, have a second source of income. I think there's an underestimated account that exists that we don't take advantage of enough. Too many GoFundMes, life insurance, right? How do you create some type of fund for your family if something happens, or even living benefits? Right? Look into it. That's how we build tax-free money. Look into tax-free money, right? That tax advantage category. That's probably number one. We pay enough in taxes as it is. So how can you find ways not only to save money on income taxes as an LLC or whatever it may be, look into an S corp, right? But also, how does your money work for you tax-free? And how can you access that money tax-free, right? As well as leaving a legacy for your family, right? How can you create a legacy overnight? Go buy a life insurance. But also you can build wealth in that to create a legacy for yourself as well as your family. So, you know, one of the biggest things for me is we see too many GoFundMes, too many fundraisers. I know even where I lived in LA, there were these two young boys and I saw them with this sign and it said, help me bury my mom. And I remember it just broke my heart. It's like, oh, one, it's your mom, but two, you don't have the money to even bury her.
Yeah.
You can have burial insurance for as little as $1 a day, right? Or 50 cents a day. And, you know, those are things that we're not taught, we're not educated on. But I think a key part of my business and what I do to help people is not just getting them set up with the right accounts, but it's educating them so that they know the value of what they're getting into, right? What that's going to do for them, but also what it's going to do for their family and maybe even for legacies and generations to come. So I think it's important to start early, right? And look into some tax-free options as well.
No, I think you made such a great point as far as life insurance is concerned, because that's one of the most critical things that I think potentially when you talk about a gap within our community, that's one of them. And I think the idea is like, you probably should have it, but people try to ration like, well, what's the benefit? And I truly think it's even more so people just don't understand what it means or what it's for or how to access it or, how to leverage it, how to use it. I think it's a combination of many of those things where it's like, it seems as if, this is something I understand I should have. This is something I probably know, but how do I access it? Where do I go to get it? What are the benefits?
Is we insure everything but our lives. We insure our phone, we insure our car, we insure our house, right? We insure our jewelry. We insure all these valuables.
Melanee, you preaching. Okay, I just want to let you know.
Is your life not worth more than all of these material things? All of those things can be replaced. You can't. So, and we have this, you mentioned crabs in a barrel. Too often we look at it and say, oh, well, she's going to go to my family after I die. But why wouldn't you want your family to be better off?
Yes.
But also now you can tap into life insurance while you're alive. Right? So how do you do that? That's when people call me and I give them the answer.
Exactly. So don't give it away so they can pick up their phone and go. No, I love it. I think you said so much, as I mentioned, that to me is one of our biggest gaps. And I've seen it personally, even within my own family. We've had recent deaths and, the insurance wasn't there. And so we had to kick off a GoFundMe. We're donating out of our own pockets. We're seeking, how can we fund, and again, it really does not take much. I think people are just afraid. It's the lack of knowledge, right? As the scripture tells us, that the reason why people perish is due to a lack of knowledge. People don't know. And so because they don't know, they feel that it is challenging or, it could be too expensive. But again, it's about educating yourselves. And so we thank you so much, because it's people like yourself that is bringing this information back to the community to help us get one step closer to developing and establishing that generational wealth that we otherwise just don't have. So Melanee, this was so amazing. I mean, I honestly could talk to you, girl, all day. As you know, we could be here literally all day talking about money, finances, investments. But I thank you so much for just coming back to our virtual platform and just gracing us with your presence and your beauty and your grace and your knowledge, most importantly. So before we leave, how can we reach you? So if someone does want to learn more about your business or learn more even about some of the topics that we've covered today, what is the best way to contact you?
Yes, please feel free to reach out. I would be more than happy to help anyone that's looking for, any information and how I can help you with your future. You can either email me or call me. My email is my name, Melanee Stubbs 21. So MELANEESTUBBS 21@gmail.com. Or you can give me a call at 219-689-2760.
Awesome. Well, I am sure some people will reach out. I'm actually also very happy you mentioned that there was a couple from the workshop. So you got clients from that. And that was one of the things that we were hoping for. I always get excited when I hear those testaments because Michelle also, who was our guest last week, she mentioned the same, that she had a client from the workshop. So I'm happy that people are reaching out and they're seeing the benefit in the services that you all are providing.
Yes. So I helped her structure her and her husband's full retirement plan. And she loved it so much and valued the information and saw the need that I also saw, that she became an agent with our firm. So she works with me part-time. She's licensed in 2 different states. The crazy part is she didn't even go to your church. She lives in Alabama.
That's amazing. The reach is there. Yes, that is all we are looking for.
Yes. She's like, oh, I just got an email and I saw it was retirement, so I attended. But she's licensed in Alabama and Georgia, and she's only been working with me about 6 months, and I helped her make part-time $10,000 in March, just from helping families. So she saw the value, but not only is she making extra income for her family, she's helping those families that need this information. Right at the end of the day, they're the ones that are winning. We're helping them the most.
No, I love that story. That is so amazing. And it just, again, that's a testament, right? We do this. We share this virtual platform at South Suburban so that we can hear those type of testimonies. It's not, to your point, just about us making additional income or having greater exposure, but it's also about the end game is helping others. And so to hear how you were able to help her, as well as, you know, increase her side hustle income, the era of the side hustle, right? On top of, you know, her now being able to help other communities adjacent to hers. I just think it's such a blessing. So I'm just so excited for you, Melanee. You are young, vibrant, and I know that God is going to continue to just bless you tremendously. I pray his blessings over your life, over your company, and I'm just excited to see where you're going to be heading in the future, because you are already, girl, on top. Okay, so I know anything more than this is just going to be extra, you know, it's the overflow, right? Extra favor. So thank you so much. Yes. Thank you so much again for coming. And we ask that you all that are listening and viewing us today to go back to last week's Midweek Moment where we have Michelle Alexander. Of course, definitely check out Melanee again and rewatch it multiple times, right? To pull some of that information and reach out to them as they are here for you. And join us again next week. We'll have another guest as we continue to navigate our financial foundations, and we recap on those keynote speakers and maybe some additional guests that will come and just speak to how they arrived to where they are today. So thank you, Melanee. I pray you have a blessed month, and we will talk soon.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Take care. Bye.